Blake Nestle. Perhaps you have heard the audio recordings of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp recently leaked to the press. On the surface, this story seems like run-of-the-mill celebrity gossip, but it launches into a much more universal topic, domestic violence. Let me preface this by stating my firm belief that aggressing upon another is morally wrong, regardless of the gender of either party. A multitude of sociologists, psychologists, and other human behavioral experts have spoken about the societal presumption of innocence most women are given. It's even statistically reflected here in the USA with the lesser prison time handed to women as opposed to men for commission of the same crime. In the recording, we can hear Heard exhibiting classic abuser techniques, mockery, gaslighting, while casually admitting to striking him. Now, it is highly likely that each of them was abusing the other, but if it was wrong when he did it, shouldn't it be equally as wrong when she did it? I think MRAs, men's rights activists, are about as ridiculous as radical feminists, but this does point to a disconnect in logic in much of modern feminism. They desire women to be societally equal to men, as do I. It's a progressive and moral position. Yet when confronted with the reality that women have an equivalent agency for being shitty, the woke apologetics are deployed en masse. This also speaks to a wider problem within the Me Too movement in that it's looking more and more like 21st century McCarthyism. There were/are genuine bastards out there who need or needed to be held to account like Weinstein and Cosby, just like there were genuine communists in America seeking its overthrow and or destruction in the late 40s and early 50s. Yet now that they've been exposed, we're seeing them under every rock and bush. Small transgressions between men and women are being deemed abuse. And now people are conscious of the fact that to even lob the accusation is enough to bring about serious consequences and or make one a social pariah. We're seeing many people, mostly men, successfully suing their former universities for the treatment they received at the hands of these Title IX kangaroo courts. I suppose my question is, how is this phenomena in the service of victims? How is sidestepping due process and equal protection of benefit to justice? I have a mother, a sister, and innumerable other women in my life that I want to see thrive, and I don't see how this helps any of them. Okay, Blake, thanks for this question and for taking the time to word it in such a way that that I'm getting where you're coming from. And you're obviously not just some, MRA on a rant here, okay? And I get that. You are trying to provide a fair look at this, and yet there are issues with this, and you're questioning about it. And you're right, too, because this is a complicated, nuanced issue that has all kinds of vectors coming at it from all different directions, and it's a pretty messy situation and has been for centuries. The struggles between men and women have been struggles. There have been problems with this, and it has been centuries, even millennia of abusive behavior towards women, women being treated as chattel, women being treated as property, women, not even treated as human beings. Or recognized as human beings. I mean, this has been a thing, and it's been a systemic thing, and it's been a problem for many, 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 many years. So then there comes the inevitable backlash or pushback against that. One of the problems here in the United States, one of the problems in almost any country anywhere, I don't know any country that's figured this out perfectly, is justice systems. Systems of justice are hard. How do you provide fair and equal treatment to everybody under all circumstances, right? How do you operate on a presumption of innocence, presumed innocent rather than guilty? That's a great thing. We want that, right? We don't want presumed guilty until proven innocent. That would suck. That means the second there's an accusation or the cops arrest you, you're in prison and you're there for the rest of your life until you can prove you're innocent. Whoa, right? Well, we don't want any of that. That's just begging for abuse. So we have it the other way around, and so we then have the problem of guilty people being able to walk free because nobody can prove that they did what they did. This is compounded by the fact that human nature enters in and bias enters in on the part of investigators, on the part of lawyers, on the part of judges, and on the part of jurists, where you get a rape victim, let's say, who finally has the courage to run the gauntlet of bias and prejudice that she's going to experience, or he, as a male, it's actually going to be even worse for them in some ways. And they run this gauntlet only to be, to experience more abusive behavior and be treated even more traumatically and have more trauma as a result of their experience. You get a defense lawyer who can, sit in the courtroom and say, well, what were you wearing? And, obviously that question doesn't have to have this sort of slimy connotation that you were asking for it, but it often does, especially when it's asked by a defense lawyer in a court of law, right? And the jury, if they are biased in the direction of women or sluts and this kind of thing. So much for, putting a rapist behind bars, because this woman will be blamed instead because she opted to dress however she opted to dress. And that's pretty uncool. So that's a problem. And this has been a problem for a very, very, very long time. So yes, you have the situation where women are given lighter sentences for the same crime as men, yet you also have the situation where women are facing tougher circumstances to prove what's happened to them when they've been sexually assaulted or abused. And let's not even bring into this the number of cases of incest out there. Interviewing Christina Richardson this last that I posted this last week on my channel was pretty eye-opening. That there are probably more cases of unreported incest and sexual abuse of minors in these households all over the United States than many people are willing to acknowledge. I didn't just base that statement, by the way, on my interview with Christina, but also on other research I've been doing on this issue. And it's the unreported, the situation of just unreported cases it's bad, So then you have, getting back to your question here of like, okay, I'm trying to, just kind of like lay out some situations here. The justice system, the difficulties with the justice system, any justice system are themselves a problem. The problems with human bias and prejudice are a problem. And then you have this other problem, which is expressed in your question, which is, okay, so now we recognize that these systems aren't really doing the job that we want them to be doing 100% of the time. Yes, they work. Yes, they work often, but they don't work all the time. And we get plenty of anecdotes, one after another, of cases where people were not dealt with fairly and where sexual abusers, even serial abusers, walk away, walk around in broad daylight, no problem, and get to continue abusing people. So we go, my God, that shouldn't be. We must do something about this. And so people try to do something about it. And they set up what are called special victim units, right? There's even an old TV show about this, right? So Law and Order, SVU, right? But this is actually a thing. And special victims units are necessary. And every police force should have one because they can bring in, people who are claiming to have been victims of sex crimes or human trafficking, the really nasty stuff. And they can get an investigator who will listen to them without re-traumatizing them in the process. Cops are generally decent people. I really, truly believe that. But interrogations can be really high-pressure, difficult situations. And when you're dealing with somebody who's traumatized, who's just been sexually assaulted, for example, or has grown up with a repeated pattern of abuse against them, you're dealing with somebody who is not, that you should not be talking to in a very harsh, stern way, right? Because you're going to be re-traumatizing them. Yet at the same time, the police are burdened with the fact that they cannot assume that this person is just telling them the truth. Because if there's anybody in the world, you should understand, are lied to more often than they're told the truth, it's cops. I mean, they learn this behavior themselves. They learn that, they can't trust everything that everybody tells them because people have all kinds of vested interest to lie to cops. So you create a special unit. You create special circumstances. You try to do these Title IX courts. You try to do SVU. You try to set up situations where these people won't be further traumatized, and yet we can get the true facts of the situation. And then you throw that into a system which, if you look at state, city level police, you're looking at underfunded departments, undermanned departments. I mean, the number of problems are legion. The number of, just things that are stacked against people going into the system and receiving justice. I mean, there's a lot. So it's difficult. So we try to set up this special stuff, and then people outside the system look at that and go, well, how come they're getting special accommodations? Why is this? And the mere fact that special accommodations are occurring will give that more attention, will give that more press. The media will pay more attention to it. There will be more anecdotes about it, good and bad, more opinions flying around about it, good and bad. And so we come to your question where you go, well, it looks like these special circumstances are creating situations where these women are able to lie, are able to abuse and game the system, and that men now are walking around on eggshells and all of this. Well, yeah, that's true. All of that's true. All of those are consequences, intended and unintended, of setting up the system. But you got to understand that the system, these special things were set up because the regular system wasn't doing the job and isn't doing the job, not to the degree that we need it to, and not to the degree to meet the actual volume of problem, which is going to harken me back to, how many sexual assaults actually are occurring every year. We have no idea. We don't. You can go up and down the statistics. You can go to the MRAs and get their statistics. You can go to the women's rights folks and get their statistics, and they are not the same story at all. Well, how does that make sense? One or both must not be true. Well, I tend to fall into the realm that I don't think either of them are true, because there are no absolutely rock-solid, nailed-down statistics on how many sexual assaults, rapes, and cases of incest are there in the United States every year. The reporting systems don't even exist, much less any statistical meta-analysis done of how many unreported cases are there. Yeah, there have been analyses done, but they're always biased. This is the thing that's been throwing me off in trying to, every time I dive down that rabbit hole, I end up coming out more confused than I am clear on what the actual situation is. We can't seem to get a clear picture of this. And until we get that, we really don't know the extent of the problem. We just have all these anecdotes and the human emotion and reaction that comes from those anecdotes, right? Because people's passions run high on this stuff. And when you're a victim of sexual assault, it makes sense that your emotions are going to run high. It is an awful experience. So we all, feel about for that stuff. And this, the push and pull of this is the sort of contortions that we're going through now as we're trying to figure out how to deal with this problem in a rational way. And then finally, you do get women who false report, right? Who falsely accuse. That happens. It does. Does it happen a lot? No, not really. I mean, not from what we can, kind of fetter out from the statistics and anecdotes that we have and the information that we have. It doesn't appear that this is, some big, huge problem that the MRAs, of course, go on about. But it's also not nothing. It's not no problem. This does happen. And when it happens, then people's lives can be ruined. And we don't want any of that either. So, what to do? Between all the emotions and the biases and the various levels of system, because when we talk about the law enforcement system, we're talking about a multi-level system. At the city level, you have a system. At the state level, you have a system. At the national level, you have a system. I guess at the county level, you have a system. And all of these are different systems, and winding things through all of this and understanding all of that and seeing how it's so radically different from how it's represented to us in entertainment. You might as well just take every single thing you've ever seen in terms of movies and TV shows about lawyering and cases and how it all works and just throw it out the window, because almost none of it is worth anything in terms of trying to learn how it really works, how lawyers really are, how cases are really tried, how the laws are really written. and how they're really enforced, and what jurors do and don't do, and what they see and don't see. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy, and then you bring in the level of expert witnesses, what makes an expert witness, how you can have opposing expert witnesses saying the exact opposite things in the same field of study, same disciplines. How's that supposed to work? I mean, there's just so many levels to this that where things go off the rails, and yet we somehow, at the end of the day, have a system that somehow works and somehow processes cases and moves things along and prosecutes enough people who do bad things, that we put enough of them away that we are able to keep going and carry on with a society. We just want to make it better. We want to make it faster. We want to make it easier. And we want there to be less of these guys and girls getting away with this stuff, right? That's at the end of the day, I think we all agree that we don't want, unprosecuted cases. We don't want cases where people are going to walk away scot-free when they are guilty. And we don't want innocent people to go to jail. And those wants are big asks in a society of 300 million people. I don't know what we at now, 316 million or 360 million or something. I mean, an unthinkable number of people just in the United States alone, much less if you extend this out to the rest of the world. These are huge problems to solve, and these are huge asks out of human beings. We are so ridiculous and so fallible and so emotional in how we deal with things that no wonder there's going to be pendulum swings both ways on the abusive behaviors of these systems, right? The innocent are going to go to jail, the guilty are going to go free, and we're going to have everything in between. And that's the fallibility of human systems. So it's not a satisfying answer. I couldn't take this to a satisfying place because it's not a satisfying situation. And it's still being sorted out. And it's still going to and it's going to take decades more to sort out fully. It just is, because that's how our systems work. They don't work fast, they work slow. And in the bigger picture, we see that generally we want that to be that way. We want things to be slow and moving along at their own pace, because that's what keeps things structurally sound and keeps them, gradually growing and gradually improving. But it can be so frustrating when you're stuck in it in the meantime, and you're at the receiving end of some form of injustice, whether it's a false accusation or whether it's, you've been legitimately victimized and you can't get help. And I think that's where we're at right now, and we've got a lot of sorting out to do, and we're going to have to just kind of show some more tolerance and patience with each other, and realize that people who have been victimized are not. That's not something you're going to get over or be able to talk completely rationally about for quite some time. You got a lot of stuff you're going to have to process when you're in the middle of that, and we have to account for that. So that's what makes this thing so difficult. Those are some thoughts on it. Maybe they're illuminating or enlightening in some fashion, but I really feel like I've only touched the tip of the iceberg of the difficulties with all of this. So it's not a matter for me of coming down, Blake, on your side or on the side of the women, because I don't look at this as sides. We're all struggling to try to figure out what to do to give the victims of injustice the justice they deserve without hurting people who don't deserve it. And this has been the struggle of our system from day one, and I don't think that that struggle is going to be over anytime soon. So we kind of roll with it and try to push the ball down the road and make this a better place to live, and hope we're doing okay. There you go.